Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. TikTok's CEO is running around Capitol Hill today trying to save the Chinese Communist Party-controlled app from demise. Here's what he had to say, caught by reporters in the hallway. Stand by here. If I can only load it for you. Here you go.
Yeah. Look, this is pre-planned. My trip to DC was pre-planned, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I intend to clarify it. There's a lot of noise, but I haven't heard, exactly what we've done that's wrong. As you know, it's very disappointing for us that the bill passed in the House of Representatives. We looked at it. This is a ban bill. In this form, if it's passed into law, this is a ban on our app in this country. It's going to impact 170 million Americans who use our app. It's going to impact 7 million small businesses, and I hope their voices are heard.
But lawmakers are saying
Thank
that
you.
this is not a ban, and you're spreading misinformation, sir.
And you're spreading misinformation, sir, says a reporter. It's not a ban, it's a divestiture bill, but the Chinese communists don't want to give this thing up. And in fact, they're saying it would be a ban. They would refuse to cede control of it. Joining us now is a man who voted against this bill yesterday. Congressman Andy Biggs joins us on the phone. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Vince, good to be with you.
And I've got to be honest, this is one of those bills where I'm always honest, by the way, but this is one of those bills where I've been tortured by it because I'm for a TikTok ban. I think getting rid of TikTok, it's a singular poison in the United States. But there are concerns about the legislation. What led you to vote no yesterday?
Well, I was iffy. I mean, because you don't want China having any kind of advantage. And also, it looks like TikTok has got some cultural problems with it too. But they're selling this as a safety measure, national security measure. So here's some things with the legislation, specifically with the legislation that kind of pushed me over. First of all, you're arrogating power to the executive. So it's the president who's going to determine who is the adversary country, right? And then after he makes that determination, all the information is going to come in a classified appendix. That means we can't even really debate it. Congress loses control to even debate whether we agree with them or not. Second of all, he determines who gets to buy the company if a divestiture is ordered.
Yes.
So that becomes a bit of a problem for me because let's say, and I don't know because I don't follow TikTok. Obviously, I don't get on it. But let's say that he determines that TikTok is giving bad news about his that the trend is bad against his administration and his policies. Maybe it's border, maybe it's economy. Well, he could facilitate a purchaser who is going to actually filter information going the other way within the U.S.
This is my concern too. I read through the language of this bill and I thought, okay, on designating these companies as being controlled by a foreign adversary, they're very clear. It's 4 countries: it's North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran. But the biggest problem I had reading the bill was qualified divestiture. Who gets to take over this platform? Who gets to make the purchase? And it leaves it entirely up to the executive branch, as I understand it.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, that is the part I'm talking about. Section 6, qualified divestiture, paragraphs A and B. They do exactly what you're concerned about, and what I was concerned about, because so that's one problem right there. But Vince, the executive has that power. But think about this: the data is right now will continue to can go anywhere because. Whoever it is right now, there's no proscription on any of these social media companies giving this and providing this information to data brokers, and data brokers then selling it around the world, which they do. Right. And they also sell it and supply it to our own federal government, who uses it to surveil American citizens without warrants. So, I mean, it's not going to do what they think it's going to do, I don't believe. And you nestle this. If it's all about security, and we are deeming that China, which I do agree with this, is an adversarial nation, what are you doing about our supply chain? What are you doing about critical minerals? What are you going to do about fentanyl poisoning coming in? What are you doing about so many of America's corporations going over there and setting up de facto headquarters over there and facilitating
farmland
the economy?
farmland purchases in the United
farmland.
States, capture of American universities. There's a huge list of Chinese threats that are here in the United States.
That's right. And so, in my opinion, probably the least of these is the data going over there. Why do I say that? Because the data is already, I believe it's already going over there, but also you're not proscribing a dissemination of that data to them from any other source in the country. So it needs to be a more comprehensive approach if you're taking it for the national security. If you're taking it from the other thing, which I mean, one of our members put out a piece, lengthy piece about it's a cultural, wasteland on TikTok, which I don't disagree with that. I agree with that. But then now you run up with this other notion, which I think David Schweiker from Arizona made a pretty good case for it. I agree with him. Your data is your private property, and so now we're going to. And I would say, as long as you're over 18, I would say, whatever. We could quibble about that, but the point is, you're going to allow the federal government now to become an intermediary between your private property right, which is your data, and your private information, and anybody else in the world. That's effectively what this bill does.
Meaning that if the federal government were to step in and ban TikTok, you are getting in the way. I'm not precisely sure what you mean. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I have my private data, and
yes.
I should have a right to enforce my rights against, say, a TikTok, a Google, a Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I should be allowed to process my rights against them. But now you've actually set up an intermediary with the federal government's kind of coming in and saying, well, we're going to mediate that. So you may agree that your private data can go there, but we're going to step in as a federal government. So that's kind of a big brother approach. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. And I've heard some lawmakers kind of make a First Amendment claim, too, that this is upending the ability of Americans to communicate in the platforms that they want to. But it's hard for me to see that argument. I know it's not the one you're making right now, but because what you're dealing with is a Chinese-controlled platform that's already extensively censoring what's allowed to be communicated. It's controlled by the government of China. There's been some argument, I've heard Rand Paul make it, that, well, they don't own it. Yeah, but a major business operating in China is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. They exist at the pleasure of the Chinese Communist Party. And it has you heard the CEO of TikTok just a moment ago. He's claiming some 170 million users in the United States of America. We're a country just over 300 million in terms of population. If that's the case, that means China is controlling the public square for a huge number of Americans and their understanding of the world around them.
I don't disagree with your point that TikTok is controlled by CCP. I just give that to you. I'm going to give you that point, but I'm going to say, isn't it ironic that the people that support banning TikTok because we're giving private individuals making a private choice to allow their information to go to TikTok, and then you're seeing all this feedback. Here's the deal: that same information is going to the federal government. Yeah. Sometimes by compulsion, and sometimes by buying it through third-party brokers. And we allow that to happen, and then they turn around and spy on us. The point is that you get to the point of who owns my private data? Who controls my private data? Is it private property, my private property? And if so, then I have rights. I have a bundle of rights in it, and I should be able to enforce those rights. Or is it freewheeling and it's out there and anybody can do anything with it? And so that's what I'm saying. I didn't make this argument because that's not where they went. I felt they were going national security. So let's see what you're doing with national security. You're not doing enough. You're not doing it. This bill doesn't accomplish it. Right. I think the private property argument has got to be addressed at some point because I don't know anybody who thinks that their data, their personal data, is private anymore. They believe it's all been compromised, and so we have to address that. Yes, for sure. And also, what are your feelings on children having access to these social media apps? It seems like one of the most destructive phenomenons of our generation, just in terms of, these kids are on social media and it's totally corrupting them. I saw a study published in the last 24 hours, or at least being shared, about TikTok, and there were college students who said they'd be willing to take $50 to stop using TikTok entirely. And if they found out that all of their friends weren't using TikTok,
they'd be willing to pay not to use TikTok, which is interesting because they feel like their lives are dominated by the social media app. Seems like a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and the stories of addiction are out there, and I think those are compelling stories. I guess the question ultimately is, because you could probably say the same thing with, I'm going to just use kind of a wild example, pornography.
Yes.
You could say that we've got a lot of people, and we provide some small amount of regulation on that, under 18, that type of thing.
Right.
So and that was one of the things I said, you should use Section 230. By the way, that's a different argument, but you should use Section 230 immediately, and that would help take care of this problem. But also, if you're going to say that it's a cultural wasteland, it's addictive for people,
Sure.
particularly for these kids, then maybe you do regulate it under the age of 18. I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm just saying
it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad. I mean, I think this social media stuff is way more damaging than even pornography. I mean, 18 and under, access to TikTok at a young age is way more damaging than some kid keeping nudie magazines in a tray house. I'm convinced of it, and yet we do regulate porn 18 and under. So it is kind of fascinating. On the political side of it, in terms of Biden, I've never for a moment have been convinced that Biden is some sort of China hawk, that he's trying to stick it to China here. They do seem to have campaign incentives here. I saw the New York Times reported yesterday that one of the problems for the Biden administration on TikTok is, that people are talking about how crappy the economy is on TikTok, despite the White House. They keep lying about that. And the other is, after October 7th, the attack in Israel, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel sentiment has run wild on TikTok and has created a lot of headaches for Biden. And that gets right back to the point, Congressman Biggs, you were making a moment ago. If Biden's in charge of who owns the platform, he may be trying to resolve that problem ahead of the election.
Well, exactly right. And that's my concern is you can't say that they're shaping our opinion, our narratives in the U.S. Without recognizing that the remedy may actually do the same thing with a whipsaw back, where the administrations, whoever the administration is, can whipsaw it back and try to shaft or change direction on the narrative in that way. So that's the point there, and that's why that's kind of probably what pushed me over finally to say, no, I can't support this.
Yeah. All right. Well, Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you for giving us that explanation today, and really appreciate your time as always. Let me go to the phones. I've got Penny, who's been waiting patiently from Burke, line 5. Penny, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show. Hello there.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
When I was listening to the State of the Union address, it just seemed so disastrous. But I have found one good thing about his performance that evening.
Yes.
And, well, I've been very worried that they were going to throw him over during the convention in August. And then Michelle Obama would only have to make like one appearance in August and 1 or 2 in September, 1 or 2 in October.
Right.
And she more than likely would win the election. But with Joe Biden having such a strong performance, I think it really solidifies that he is going to be the nominee, and he is entirely beatable.
I think you're right about his beatability. I do. I completely agree with you. I don't know. I feel like it's still a coin toss whether or not he's going to actually be the guy come election day. But to your point, when you say he had a strong performance, you mean strong for Joe Biden. This is a relative measure.
Yeah. He showed proof of life, and actually, I think that they are blood doping him prior to the speeches, because last year at the State of the Union address, he delivered a much stronger performance than what I thought he was going to. And this one, the only thing that I can think of that can really pump him up that well is if they actually did blood doping.
Blood doping? I'm trying to catch up on what that means. Do you mean like putting an IV into him? What is blood doping?
Well, blood doping, so the Tour de France cyclists would save up their own blood, and then they super oxygenate it before the race. And then they infuse it. They take infusions and they infuse it back into their body, and it gives them that super endurance and the ability to really have a fantastic performance. And I think that's what they're doing with him.
Oh man, I could use some of that. Imagine how good this show would be if I did some blood doping before every show. So yeah, I believe it. That actually might be a perfectly good explanation for how they juice him up. And there's probably a process that's involved there. I did think during that week that they didn't have anything scheduled that week, Benny, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. So I had some people suggest to me that they were changing his sleep pattern. It was almost like they were trying to adjust him to jet lag. Like, you're going to be awake starting at 9 o'clock. So they had to keep him awake each night at that time to make sure he was ready to do it come Thursday. But yeah, the media went wild over it. They had established the expectations were so rock bottom for him that when he was able to walk off of the dais under his own power, it was considered a great victory, Penny.
Well, he really did deliver everything that they wanted. He delivered. And I have been very worried about the Michelle Obama situation only recently, because I just was thinking, no, it's going to be Gavin Newsom. And now,
when they announced that they were holding the convention in Chicago, that's the moment my spidey senses started going off about Michelle instantly. I was like, wait, Chicago? Yeah. Chicago's not a swing state or a swing city. In fact, the New York Times preposterously referred to the decision for the DNC to go to Chicago as a swing region of the country, as if the adjoining states somehow are compelled by a Chicago convention. It's like the most ridiculous spin ever. But guess who would do well in Chicago? Oh, the hometown girl.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right, Penny. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vince.
I'm going to look up that blood doping, see if I can do it the next half hour. Hold tight. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I want to get to some of the craziness going on at CNN. What do they call themselves? The worldwide leader in news? They used to call themselves something like that. Worldwide leader in nonsense. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But there's a couple of Trump legal cases all playing out today. Real quickly, the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, their office said they are now willing to delay Donald Trump's trial. This is the Stormy Daniels nonsense, the one that lawyers from all corners of the political universe said is most likely to die a well-deserved death. Alvin Bragg says he's now willing to delay the trial for up to 30 days. The trial is scheduled to start, 11 days from now, March 25th. But they're willing, we'll allow you some time to review all the new materials that we've been presenting. So that trial gets delayed further. It gets closer and closer to the election. There's that. Meanwhile, we are waiting on Fulton County. That's where the Fani Willis fiasco has been playing out. And the judge in that case, McAfee, says that he will be making a decision by the end of this week. So, it's Thursday, so he's got till tomorrow to make a decision on whether or not to disqualify her and her merry band of idiots from the case. So that'll be interesting to see what he does there. God willing, he disqualifies her because she deserves that. And then there's the case of Jack Smith going after Trump for his handling of documents from his time as president of the United States. Now, this is an unusual case for a number of reasons, including no other president's been gone after for having documents from his time as president of the United States. Donald Trump has. And this is, right in the wake of this hearing is right in the wake of Robert Hur's testimony before Congress and the report that he released demonstrating that Joe Biden stole classified documents over the course of many decades as both a senator and vice president of the United States, not president, not with the type of classification and declassification authority that comes with being president. And then he got away with it because he's a sympathetic elderly man with a poor memory. It's the way Robert Hur treated that case. So does Donald Trump have a selective prosecution argument? Well, more on that in a moment. Right now, we're just seeing the breaking news that the judge presiding over the classified documents case in Florida has denied, at least for now, Donald Trump's motion to dismiss charges based on, they say, unconstitutional vagueness. Here, CNN with the blog report on the subject, saying just hours before her ruling, Judge Eileen Cannon heard arguments in a Fort Pierce courtroom over Trump's motion, where his attorney said the law that prosecutors used to charge him for allegedly retaining national defense records without authorization was too vague to be used against him. Cannon writing this, quote, although the motion raises various arguments warranting serious consideration, the court ultimately determines, following lengthy oral argument, that resolution of the overall question presented depends too greatly on contested instructional questions about still fluctuating definitions of statutory terms and phrases as charged. So she noted in her denial that the issue of potential vagueness of the statute would be better brought with jury instruction briefing and or other appropriate motions. That is later in the trial with the jury present, rather than to dismiss it early. So that's the snap headline take on all of this. Now, among the people who have been in attendance at this courtroom proceeding was our friend Julie Kelly, who has had a fascinating thread today on everything that's going on there. She said this today on X. She said, from the Florida courthouse in Trump's classified documents case with a prediction, she says, the Robert Hur report and testimony is the biggest elephant in the room. The term arbitrary enforcement has been used frequently by both the defense and Judge Eileen Cannon. Cannon hammered the fact that no former president or vice president has ever been charged under the Espionage Act for taking and keeping classified records, including national defense information, which represents 32 of the counts against Trump in Jack Smith's indictment. Julie says that she predicts this. Cannon will not dismiss the case based on the motions debated today. Okay, so she was right about that. Her prediction came true. The vagueness of the Espionage Act and protection under the Presidential Records Act. But it is very likely she will dismiss the case based on selective prosecution, which is a motion that's still pending before her. Cannon pressed both the defense and the special counsel to explain when the crime of willful retention of national defense information begins. She noted the date in Jack Smith's indictment as to when Trump first violated the Espionage Act is January 20th, 2021, the day he left office. And then she goes on here, but I'll just say the most important element to me of Julie Kelly's excellent thread on the subject today, and you can see more of it on X, is that she thinks that Trump is presenting a very interesting, intriguing case to Judge Eileen Cannon, that there's a selective prosecution case going on here. And for us, the rest of us, it seems obvious that this is selective prosecution. You're charging Trump for something that doesn't even involve a criminal violation of the law. You talk to Mike Davis, all these guys, they're like, he's not even violating a law here. He was president of the United States. It was up to him what was considered classified or declassified, what was considered official or personal. That's at the discretion of the president. And yet you don't charge Biden having stolen documents from his time as both senator and vice president, and then disseminating them to his ghostwriter, and even admitting on a recording that they were classified documents, and then taking $8 million in a book advance for the book that was set to contain that classified information. The ghostwriter attempting to delete the information as the special counsel was announced in order to cover up Joe Biden's crimes. Of course, Biden's not charged here. Sympathetic elderly man with a poor memory. So we'll see. We'll see what Judge Eileen Cannon does with this. The left hates her, by the way. They're like, Trump appointed. They hate that she's even treating Trump as a legitimate defendant who's allowed to bring these motions. They hate that. They're trying to get her thrown off the case, just to give you a sense of what they're up to. Meanwhile, a bunch of CNN news for you today, which is interesting. You saw Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who the left is really nervous about. The Democrats are mounting a full-scale operation now to attack third-party candidates because they're scared that if RFK Jr. is on the ballot across the country, he's going to take away votes from Biden. People are going to say, I don't like Biden, I don't like Trump, but I'm going to go with a Kennedy. And that is, Biden 2020 voters might decide to go with RFK Jr. In fact, the Biden administration has refused to even give Secret Service protection to RFK Jr., despite the threats on his life, because they're petty and they don't want to legitimize his presidential campaign. And RFK Jr. this week apparently told CNN that he's got a short list of running mates that he's interested in. And among them are people he recently met with, Aaron Rodgers, the famous NFL quarterback, as well as former Minnesota Governor Jesse the Body Ventura. These are people he's considering to be his running mate. And so within seconds, CNN has now launched an all-out assault on Aaron Rodgers. Like, they'll probably get to Jesse Ventura too, but right now, Aaron Rodgers, they're attacking. And here's how they're doing it. They have a piece up claiming that Aaron Rodgers is a Sandy Hook truther. They say independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has confirmed that among his potential vice presidential prospects is New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who in private conversations shared deranged conspiracy theories about the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting not being real. CNN knows of two people with whom Rodgers has enthusiastically shared these stories, including with, you ready for the source on this? Pamela Brown, one of the journalists writing this piece. Okay, so your source is literally the woman who's on the byline. When did this happen, Pamela Brown? How long ago? Did this happen a week ago? Did he tell you a week ago that Sandy Hook was fake? Is that what he said a week ago? No, he said it in 2013. Brown was covering the Kentucky Derby for CNN in 2013 when she was introduced to Rodgers, then with the Green Bay Packers. This is CNN's report. Hearing that she was a journalist with CNN, Rodgers immediately began attacking the news media for covering up important stories. Rodgers brought up the tragic killing of 20 children and 6 adults by a gunman at Sandy Hook Elementary School, claiming it was actually a government inside job and the media was intentionally ignoring it. When Brown questioned him on the evidence to show that this very real shooting was staged, Rodgers began sharing various theories that have been disproven numerous times. Jones, they talk about Alex Jones here. They say he baselessly repeated lies. They're trying to connect Aaron Rodgers to all of this. Now, this is fascinating. So they say they also talked to another person who remains anonymous, who says they agree. They also heard Rodgers claim some time ago, Sandy Hook never happened. All those children never existed. They were all actors. That's the quote given by the anonymous person. And this is how CNN treats it. So they reach out to Aaron Rodgers for comment. And they say, on Thursday, Rodgers did not deny the comments that he made to Brown, who, again, the reporter on the byline, or the other source, but said on X, quote, as I'm on the record saying in the past, what happened in Sandy Hook was an absolute tragedy. I am not and have never been of the opinion that the events did not take place. Okay, hold up a second. CNN just said he did not deny the comments. He literally denies the comments in his statement. He says, I am not and have never been of the opinion that the events did not take place. Again, I hope we learn from this and other tragedies to identify the signs that will allow us to prevent unnecessary loss of life. My thoughts and prayers continue to remain with the families affected, along with the entire Sandy Hook community. So Rodgers, who as far as I can tell, hasn't even indicated that he's interested in joining a political ticket. All RFK does is say, well, I met with the guy. I'd be interested in him potentially as a running mate. CNN is looking to destroy Aaron Rodgers now. Destroy him. He's a Sandy Hook truther. Rodgers is like, wait a second. I never said any of this. And they said he didn't deny it. He literally denied it. Literally. And CNN continues to claim he didn't. Now, as far as this Aaron Rodgers thing goes, there's also this. There's contemporaneous audio of Aaron Rodgers mourning the children lost at Sandy Hook. Our buddy Greg Price today sharing video. This is a television report from 2012. Aaron Rodgers is quoted on local news. Here he is.
But from lawmakers to celebrities, the whole country really is talking about the people and what happened in Newtown.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers getting in on that as well today. He shares what he hopes will come from this tragedy.
I hope that we can learn from this and look for the signs more and not ever have something like this happen and keep this on our minds, because these are things that affect all of us directly or indirectly, and this needs to be something that we learn from.
So why isn't that in the CNN piece? It's not even mentioned. Aaron Rodgers giving statements, I would imagine, within the days of the attack, saying how awful it is, mourning the children. Wouldn't that be, if you were doing a piece of journalism and you were set to allege, oh, Aaron Rodgers doesn't think it happened, well, then how do you explain the audio of him expressing his condolences for the loss of life. How do you square that? Well, they didn't even bother. They didn't even put it in the piece. So in case you're wondering what CNN's up to, there's that. Also this week, Don Lemon, who was fired by CNN, remember, fired by CNN, he just conducted an interview with Twitter's Elon Musk. Excuse me, X's Elon Musk, the guy who owns X now, formerly Twitter. And apparently at the conclusion of the interview, it was so horrible, and Don Lemon treated Elon Musk like such garbage. Musk decided, not long after the interview, within 24 hours apparently, to text Don Lemon and say, hey, our deal is off. The deal being, they had some sort of deal for Don Lemon to distribute a new show on Twitter. And I don't know what a deal like that would include. I'm not sure if it involves any kind of financial benefit or maybe promotional benefit. They'll prominently feature Don Lemon's show, whatever it is. They had a deal. They had an arrangement. And so Musk has decided the deal is off. And of course, Don Lemon is now a martyr for this. Now, let me just pause and just emphasize something. He's not being removed from Twitter. He's allowed to produce a show and post it to Twitter all he wants. Elon Musk is just saying, I just want nothing to do with it as far as a business arrangement. But if you want to share your show on Twitter, go for it. So nobody is silencing Don Lemon here. But Don Lemon, who was actually fired by CNN, went on CNN last night to claim that Elon Musk is the threat to free speech by canceling his deal with Don Lemon. Again, how senseless is this? Don Lemon's literally on the network that fired him, took his platform away. Why isn't he attacking CNN as robbing him of free speech? He's attacking Elon Musk of robbing him from free speech, and Elon Musk is still letting him on the platform. Here's Aaron Burnett last night reading Don Lemon's statement out.
In a statement earlier today, Lemon writes in part, quote, there were no restrictions on the interview that he willingly agreed to. We had a good conversation. Clearly, he felt differently. His commitment to a global town square where all questions can be asked and all ideas can be shared seems not to include questions of him from people like me. Now, CNN reached out to X
still allowed
for
on
their
Twitter.
comment, and their response is, quote, we reserve the right to make decisions about our business partnerships. And after careful consideration, X decided not to enter into a commercial partnership with the show.
But he's still on Twitter.
Now, this decision, coming as Musk had, of course, publicly courted Lemon and has repeatedly made a commitment to free speech when he bought Twitter.
He's still on Twitter.
Again and again.
I mean, the whole thing is insanity. I mean, what is this? And of course, Don Lemon goes and he's like happy to be on CNN, where I thought he was miserable that he got fired from. And he's like, oh, yeah, the real threat to free speech is Elon Musk.
Then you had reached a deal. I'll talk about that later. Then he texts 24 hours after this 90-minute long interview, which is the first of your show launching. He says, contract is canceled. What happened?
First of all, it's good to see you, Aaron. Thank you for having me on. That's a good question for Elon Musk, quite frankly, what happened. I don't know. As I said in my statement, I felt really good about the interview. I said to him as we were doing the interview, and it was tense at moments, but you've been involved in tense interviews. Yep. I said to him, I think it's good that people see folks like you and I who have different worldviews come together and talk, as he says, have free speech. Free speech is only important when someone you
He's still
don't
on
like,
Twitter.
or I would say someone who doesn't have your same point of view.
He hasn't been banned.
Or someone is, if they're allowed to speak freely.
He's still allowed
to say their point of view. Apparently that doesn't matter to Elon Musk. It's just for maybe talking points for him or rhetoric. Because,
he's still on Twitter.
It doesn't seem to matter when it's about him, questions about him from people like me.
Okay, let me give you an example of what Don Lemon was saying to Elon Musk here.
Do you believe that X and you have some responsibility to moderate hate speech on the platform? That you wouldn't have to answer these questions from reporters about the Great Replacement Theory as it relates to Democrats? I don't have to answer these questions.
The Great Replacement Theory is a product of Democrats.
Replacement Theory as it relates to Jewish people. Do you think that?
I don't have to answer questions from reporters. Don, the only reason I'm doing this interview is because you're on the X platform and you asked for it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I would not do this interview.
So you don't think? Do you think that you wouldn't get in trouble or you wouldn't be criticized for these things?
I'm criticized constantly. I could care less.
Yeah, and he spent the whole time. This is basically, apparently, the whole interview sounds like that. So Elon Musk was like, "Why am I in business with this guy?" Okay, yeah, you can express yourself. He's still on Twitter. I don't know how many times I can say. Can I say it again? He's still on Twitter. They haven't taken away his microphone. He still has it. Maybe they should take it away. 550. Yeah, now there's pictures going around of Aaron Rodgers. He had a helmet sticker back in 2012. It said Sandy Hook Elementary School. It spelled it out as an acronym while he was playing as a Green Bay Packer. They'll lie about anything, literally anything for Democrats. Hey, the great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on WMAL. Stay with us.